Hello and welcome to the cryptocurrency news channel. Today we're actually going to look at some numbers and not random hopium stuff. Technically, what we're actually going to do is look at the numbers of the actual volume numbers from XRP on the Mexican and Filipino corridor, because those are the two corridors where X-rapid is actually open for Mercury FX, and we're going to see, we're actually going to see kind of if the volumes have increased since Mercury FX has gone live. The dates are actually right here. Ignore these down here. We're actually looking at the last segment of these dates, but the dates for both the volume on the bottom and the prices on top are here. So this is the Mexican corridor and this is the Filipino corridor. The Mexican corridor is directly from Bitso. Bitso is the premium exchange that XRP MXN actually flows through, because so these are direct numbers. The PHP one, I couldn't get the direct graph from coins.ph regards to volume, so I actually just did the last half year for XRP to Filipino peso, and what we're looking for is there an increase after XRapid went live and on those corridors, and is it sustainable? We know that Ripple has actually made a big ad campaign to advertise the availability of their products in these corridors. I'm not really sure if we can see the results from that, but they've kept on saying that the volume between is consistently and constantly growing in those corridors with XRapid, and we want to see if that's actually true or not. So I actually forgot when Mercury FX actually announced that they went live with XRapid. I think it was sometime in March, late March maybe. No, it was April 3rd. It was actually around, it was late March, early April. They first sent the first transaction on March 5th. And then most of it was actually late March, early April, which is right here. As you can see on the Mexican corridor actually came first. So a lot of that was late March, early April. You can see there was a big surge here from about March 28th to about April 3rd, the initial batch. But then, unfortunately, it actually went down. So they actually haven't been able to constantly increase the volume of XRP moving through the Mexican corridor, either to build up liquidity or to actually just transfer the actual money. There probably has been some transfers, but it's really not been all that large. This also coincides with kind of like with a small increase in XRP price. I personally don't really think that's really that significant, because I'm more or less looking at the actual volume. I'm much more interested in the volume, because the Mexican corridor is actually a fairly small one. It doesn't really have that much. It has maybe like 100,000, 120,000 of like speculative volume moving through it each day. And that's speculative volume plus possible XRapid use. But if we see an increase after, if we see a steady increase after late March, based on that volume, we can kind of assume that XRapid volume makes up for that increase. But you can see there was a surge in March, in late March, early April, and that coincides with the price. And generally, when price has any kind of big movement, the volume does surge way up on all corridors. But what we wanted to see is maintaining that type of volume after that surge ended, and we didn't see that. Right now, essentially, we are back to in the Mexican corridor. We are in early May. We are basically back to where we were basically before XRapid launched. So there has been basically almost no extra volume on the Mexican corridor due to XRapid, or not anything noticeable on the Mexican corridor. Remember, the Mexican corridor only has about 120,000 a day. So even on the order of $120,000 a day, the XRapid use, the extra volume from XRapid use is insignificant. So it's at most a couple of $1,000s a day, if even that. So as you can see, it's about like, where we were in late February, early March, even going back to like, mid-February, where we are right now. So XRapid has not really accounted for much volume at all. On the Filipino chart, it actually looks a little bit better. It is going down, but it is actually looking a little better. And remember the Filipino corridor actually came later, so we actually do expect more of that initial rush when they first launched, because Mercury FX wanted to test a couple more transactions. But as you can see right now in early May, we're still at about the volume of 48 million, not dollars, Filipino pesos, but we've come down from a top of around 157 million 157 billion Filipino pesos. Now we're at 48 billion Filipino pesos, and generally this has a little more sustaining power. I would say we were back at kind of like our December volumes. And but we'll have to see where we are at the end of the month, because right now it seems to be declining. There's initial excitement for this launch maybe. The price of XRP also rose a bit here, but it looks like there was some initial excitement for their launch, and now it's tapering off. So, but if this volume can actually maintain, in May, without if May's price basically stays stable or drops a little bit, and this volume can actually maintain and not continue to go down, then that actually means the Filipino corridor actually has people using XRP. But right now it is decreasing, maybe after that initial excitement. If we drop down to around 30 or in the 20s even, 20 billion Filipino pesos per day, then that really means that XRP really hasn't generated any extra volume on a daily basis in the Filipino corridor. So as you can see from these graphs, the Mexican graph basically says that XRapid is really not being used despite the corridor actually being open. It might be used, but it's at most a couple $1,000s a day. It's not significant, even with a small amount of volume in the Mexican corridor. And the Filipino, as for the Filipino corridor, it looks a little more hopeful, but we'll need to see what happens in the next 3 weeks. If it drops back down to early March, then we know it's probably not being used, because the corridor wasn't even open in early March. So we'll actually need to see what happens, what the average volume is. Take the Filipino corridor, Ripple PHP is at CoinGecko, and you can get the Mexican corridor directly from Bitso. So that is the kind of like XRapid actual use numbers analysis. This is not like that bullcrap hopium nonsense, but these are actual numbers and volumes from the two corridors that are actually in question. Hopefully Ripple's ad campaign for these corridors spurs activity up, but if it doesn't, that means either not enough people know about this, or they're just choosing to use another method like one of the smaller remittance companies. So a lot of people are saying that they timed this new ad campaign exactly with the release of Xcurrent 4.0. That's actually not true either. Xcurrent 4.0 has been out for like half a year, and many institutions have actually had it for several months now. So basically, this is an article from November 28th, 2018, and it says Ripple's most popular offering, Xcurrent, is getting an upgrade to version 4.0 and will now feature integration with XRapid. This article was written a couple of months after the a month or two after Xcurrent 4.0 actually came out. This will give customers the ability to complete cross-border transactions in milliseconds with on-demand liquidity powered by XRapid technology. Now, here's the other part. The rollout of the newest version of Xcurrent, which is Xcurrent 4.0, happened in September for Santander Bank and American Express, among others. So the Xcurrent 4.0 has actually been available since last September, and many of Ripple's largest customers, like Santander and American Express, actually have been on Xcurrent 4.0 since late September last year. There's probably a lot more clients than Santander and American Express that have already upgraded for a couple of months now. They are still in the process of upgrading some of their other partners, but it's not like Xcurrent 4.0 just came out and they just started upgrading. I think that rumor was actually started because someone actually tweeted David Schwartz asking him if Xcurrent 4.0 was live, and David Schwartz basically retweeted saying like, yes, it's live, but we're still grading some of our customers. But the upgrades actually started in September of last year. So they didn't time the ad campaign to coincide with the start of Xcurrent 4.0, because that was like more than 6 months ago. But that's really not the important part. Bitso, like I said, the volumes at Bitso and the XRP PHP chart at CoinGecko should be of a lot of interest to anyone who's interested in XRP and XRapid and what the actual use is, and how much they're actually using it, and how much impact does it have on volume. Because right now, for the Mexican corridor, it seems like there's pretty much no usage. based on volumes. And these aren't like, these aren't like the CEOs like saying like good things about the company, or, people who want to bring the company down saying bad things about the company. These are the actual volume numbers. These are really numbers you can't argue that much against. These are just like the total volumes flowing through the corridor every day, which includes XRapid. And if there was a lot of XRapid use, you'd see a significant increase, sustained increase after the initial release, which is around here. As you can see, there was more volume around here in February too, but that's because there was a lot of price movement here. So any large price movement actually does coincide with volume. But if there's like consistent XRapid use, the volume should be greater than before on a consistent basis. And right now it isn't. So that means like very few people are actually using the XRapid service, both in the Mexican corridor. The Filipino corridor is a little better, but it is decreasing as well after the initial news. So we'll have to keep an eye on this. And that's really how you can sort of keep track of the XRapid usage right now and see how much is actually being used in the current corridors. Not just all these new ones that they want to like open, but in the current corridors, how much utility is it actually being utilized with. So that is the report for today. Hope you enjoyed kind of like looking at numbers, looking at XRapid and looking at XRP. Check out my Twitter, it's in the description. If you like my content, share it on social media, like and subscribe, and hit that notifications button. Thank you and have a nice day.